I went camping by the ocean this past weekend. Just me, a tent, and the waves. It wasn't picture perfect, though. The sky was gray most of the time. The air was cold. And at night, the rain came in sideways whilst the wind shook the walls of my tent. The tent took on sort of this human sort of aspect. It breathed in, it breathed out. And because the rain was blowing sideways, even though the tent's practically brand new, there were little droplets of rain coming in at different parts of the seams, to the point where I was twisting up into a pretzel, trying not to get wet. I managed to stay dry. Thing is I wasn't completely prepared, and I felt it. And yet, something about being out there, stripped of comforts and noise, gave me clarity. Here's the thing about getting away. We usually think it means escape, a break from stress, from people, from responsibility. But I realize that getting away doesn't just change your scenery, it changes your perspective. Sometimes we need to get away alone, to remember that solitude doesn't mean loneliness. And sometimes we need to get away with our families also, chosen or otherwise. And that can bring history, tension, and healing all in the same breath. This trip reminded me, getting away is less about leaving and more about arriving. Arriving at simplicity, at presence, at a truer version of yourself. So today, we're going to explore what getting away really means. Alone, with family, and with the people we choose. Not as an escape, but as a path back to center. Are you ready? I am. I'm Jonah. I'm your person. Let's get to it. Welcome back to the show. I wrote this episode like a personal journal entry, and I simply wanted to tell a story of my personal adventures and what it meant to me to go camping, of not having gone camping in nearly 17 years, and honestly, what it meant to go alone. It was kind of awkward for me, but it was a test for me to know that what I was doing was okay, and that going alone wasn't all that bad. Partly because it gave me time to reflect. It gave me time to center myself, and it gave me time to be present with nature and the other things around me. Prior to my camping trip, I had anticipated and hoped that it would be a nice weekend on the coast. I went to this place called Twin Harbor State Park. It's near the town of Westport in the great state of Washington. As I mentioned, I wasn't completely prepared. I had left some small things behind that I ended up needing. And those absences could have felt like failures. Instead, they became tiny lessons. I learned to laugh at my own assumptions, to MacGyver or MacGruger, if you watch SNL, solutions with what I had. And to accept that not everything needs to be perfect to be real. And being unprepared exposed a layer of myself that only shows up when convenience is gone. Resourcefulness, patience, and a softer confidence. Some of my activities from this past weekend are, I walked the beach, which I love to do, looking for shells and rocks and just being able to walk. And I found 7 sand dollars scattered like little secret notes. Now, typically around this time, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of sand dollars scattered across the beach. Many are broken from people stepping on them, or cars are allowed to drive on the beach itself, or seagulls cracking them open for some weird reason. I don't quite know. But I walked away with these 7 beautiful whole sand dollars, not a break in any of them. Also, there were rocks. I love rocks. That looked ordinary until I lifted them up and saw them close and saw their strange, quiet beauty. And I launched my drone and I had it climb up to 400 feet above the shoreline. And from that height, the coast looks so different with its lines and its curves and such. And that aerial view Didn't erase the cold or the wet. That is definitely something that didn't happen. But it offered perspective that problems that felt enormous at eye level looked proportionate from above. And the coastline's continuity made my moment feel part of something larger. Going alone did feel a bit awkward because I'm used to doing things with my son or my friends. But I realized that alone doesn't have to mean lonely. Solitude can be a practice, a place where you sit with your own thoughts and learn how to be steady without an audience. On that trip, I did practice being present with my discomfort and with delight, practicing the kind of self-acceptance that doesn't demand applause. The ocean kept its rhythm, whether or not I complained or not, and the trip reminded me that being with yourself is not a default failure state. It's a skill worth building. And if you can find ease in your own company, you'll step back into the world steadier, clearer, and more honest about what you actually need. The morning after I had arrived, I woke up to the wind still rolling over the beach, a slight drizzle, the waves keeping their endless rhythm and crashing on the shore. There was a quiet in it, yes, but not emptiness. The world was still speaking. It just wasn't shouting. And for the first time in nearly 17 years, I realized how much of my own life is filled with noise I didn't even know that I was carrying. Notifications pinging, deadlines looming, the hum of obligations, the chatter in my own head. So much of it is constant. We don't notice the weight of it until it's gone. And out there, none of that mattered. I had no meetings, no social updates, no immediate to-do lists. Just me, the sand beneath my shoes, beneath my feet, and the sound of water rolling again and again. At first, the quiet did feel a bit strange. My thoughts stretched themselves out, unedited, unfiltered. I could feel the tension I normally carried in my shoulders and in my chest. My mind slowed. Not because I forced it, but because the world around me had slowed. And with that slowing, I noticed something I often forget. I can breathe without carrying everything at once. I can just be present. I walked along the tide line, thinking about how easy it is to drown in the noise, even when we're surrounded by people. And the ocean reminded me that noise is optional. It's something we pick up, layer by layer, until we forget that we could set it down. Flying the drone again, I let it rise high, far above the waves and the wind. And from that height, the coastline looked simple. Vast, yes, but uncomplicated. It was a reminder that perspective doesn't come from running faster or doing more. It comes from stepping back, allowing distance, and watching. And being alone doesn't mean being cut off from life. It means being attuned to it in a way we rarely get to be. The ocean, the wind, the rain, they were all teachers for me. And the lesson was clear. If we can notice the noise we carry and learn to set it down, even briefly, we give ourselves the chance to see what really matters. Walking the beach that morning, I kept picking things up like a little kid. A piece of driftwood shaped by years of water. Rocks that looked plain until I rinsed them off and saw patterns hidden in the surface. 7 sand dollars, each one fragile and whole at the same time. None of it was planned. I didn't come out there with a checklist or a goal. I just noticed what was already there. And it made me think about how often we live like there's always something missing. A better plan, a bigger win, more gear, more time, more money. But on that stretch of sand, I realized I had enough. I wasn't comfortable in the way I would be at home. I wasn't fully prepared in the way I thought I should be. But even then, it was enough. I think I think a lot of us get caught in the trap of waiting until things are perfect before we give ourselves permission to enjoy life. We hold back because something is incomplete. But the truth is, nothing is ever fully complete. There's always going to be something missing, and that's okay. The question is whether we can notice the good that's already in front of us. Those sand dollars didn't make the cold go away. The drone flight didn't dry out my gear, but both shifted my focus. They reminded me that joy and perspective don't need perfect conditions. They just need attention. And maybe that's the real skill of getting away. Not escaping, not finding the perfect moment, but paying attention to what's already here and letting that be enough. When I finally packed up my gear and loaded it back into the car, I thought about all the work waiting for me at home. Emails, meetings, messages I hadn't returned. The kind of list that grows while you're not looking. Heck, because the coverage out there wasn't great, I had all this content, all these photos, all this video that I normally, when I'm dropping in promotion reels, I'm doing that at the time I'm making them. I edit them, I put music to them, etc. But I just knew that all of that had bundled up. And I knew that either halfway home, where I had better coverage, I needed to start dropping that content. Or wait till I get home, it's kind of already outdated. And those are all the things that were going through my mind. And normally, that thought would stress me out. The I'm behind feeling is one that I know all too well, and I'm sure you share that with me. But this time, I noticed something different. I wasn't rushing to get back. I wasn't panicked about catching up. And the work would still be there, just like the ocean was there and still is there when I left the camp. Heck, ironically, I'm recording this show on Thursday night. I'm normally recording the show on Tuesday night for a Wednesday drop, so I'm late getting this out. But what I was taught at that time on the beach and coming home, that this would still be there. And that you, as my subscribers, my listeners, my friends, my family, would provide a little bit of grace for me to be a little late. And that's okay. I do appreciate that you're being patient with me. For those of you who have already messaged me saying, where's the episode? Where's the episode? That's part of the reason why it's a bit late, because I was just being. That shift mattered because it reminded me that not everything is as urgent as it feels. The world doesn't fall apart if we step away for a night or a weekend. The world doesn't fall apart if I'm 4 hours late dropping a show. Sometimes the deadlines, the calls, the pressure, they're real. But sometimes they're just noise. And the only way to tell the difference is to step away long enough to see it clearly. And I realize too that when I do return, I bring more to the table if I've let myself breathe. If I keep grinding without pause, my work gets dull. My energy drops. But when I step out, even briefly, I come back sharper. So maybe the work that waits isn't just the tasks piling up. Maybe it's also deeper work, paying attention to myself, noticing when I'm drained, and allowing recovery before I jump back in. That's the kind of work that doesn't scream for attention, but it might be the most important of all. One of the best parts about the trip had nothing to do with the big picture. It was the tiny things, the little things, like finding those 7 sand dollars along the shoreline. Each one, a little gift the tide had left behind. Or spotting rocks with streaks of color I don't usually notice when I'm rushing. Heck, flying my drone was another thing. And I know I've mentioned that a couple of times now, or maybe 3 times. But if you've ever flown a drone and see from the height of 400 feet what the planet looks like, these are visuals that most people don't get to see. So seeing the coastline from 400 feet up gave me angles my eyes couldn't even imagine. From above, the waves looked less like chaos and more like rhythm. That perspective reminded me how often life feels messy when we're in it, but from a different view. The patterns start to make sense from that different perspective. As a quick example, a long time ago when my son was, I believe, a preteen, he was struggling with something, and I said, "Look, get up on top of the table." And he thought I was crazy. He even refused to do it. But I said, "Get up on top of the table, and I want you to tell me what you see." So, of course, he climbs up on the table like the good boy he was and still is. And the first thing he said was, "I see the grease on top of the cupboards." We giggled a bit. But I said, "Tell me what else you see, son." And he described the things that normally are in our house, but from a different perspective. And I shared with him at the time, it's not what you're seeing, it's how you're seeing it different, from a different place. And that's what the drone gets us and allows us to do. So even the challenges, like forgetting a few things I could have used, added to the trip. I wasn't fully prepared, but I adapted. I made it work. I had a different perspective. And there's nothing more satisfying about that. You realize how much you don't actually need and how capable you are of handling the unexpected. The small joys stacked up into something bigger. They reminded me that happiness isn't always this massive, life-changing event. Sometimes it's a handful of sand dollars, a drone flight, a fire you managed to start in the wind even though there was a burn ban and I didn't get to start a fire. Those moments stick because they're simple and they're yours. And that's why I'm so glad that I went anyway, feeling a bit lonely, feeling a bit awkward. I figured that not only could I do it, but I'm better for it. It made me think about how often we wait for grand experiences to feel alive, when in reality, it's usually the smaller joys that shape our memories. They're the proof that life doesn't have to be extraordinary to be meaningful. One last thing before I move on to the next part. When I'm on my social media and I'm watching my friends' activities, one of the things or places where I see them at their most happiest is when they're in the ocean, or when they're camping, or floating down a river, or wading or swimming in a river or hot springs. I see the joy and raw happiness of emotion on their faces. And I want more of that. And so that's why I decided to go by myself. Because not only am I deserving of it, but I need it, just like other humans do. Driving away from the campsite, I kept looking in the rearview mirror at the ocean. It was still there, still endless, still loud. The waves didn't pause just because I was leaving. And that was strangely comforting. And trips like that don't erase responsibilities or fix every problem waiting at home. But they do something else. They shift how we carry it all. I noticed I wasn't as tense. My shoulders felt lighter. My thoughts weren't racing the way they usually do when I'm headed back. It struck me that real value of stepping away isn't in the escape itself. It's how you return. The break changes the baseline. You come back different, even if it's just slightly. More patient, more aware, more willing to notice things instead of bulldozing through them. That change doesn't scream. It's not dramatic, but it's real. And if I can hold on to even a fraction of what it meant to be there, because when I dive back into emails, meetings, and the grind, then the trip will have done more than give me a story to tell. It will have changed how I show up in my everyday life. Maybe that's the bigger point. We don't get away just to get away. We get away to return with new eyes, even if nobody else notices the difference. The ocean stays the same, but maybe I don't. As I made my final trek down that stretch of I-5, I reflected on the last night in the tent. I listened to the rain tapping against the nylon walls and the wind pushing through the trees. It wasn't cozy or picture perfect. It was a little raw, a little uncomfortable, and strangely grounding. Because out there, there's no mute button for the weather. You take it as it comes, and you learn to adapt. I thought about how often I chase comfort in my everyday life, routine, predictability, convenience. But comfort doesn't always lead to growth. Sometimes it's the cold air seeping into the tent or the wet sand sticking to your shoes that reminds you that you're still alive. The ocean never stopped moving whilst I was there. Through the night, through my sleep, through the packing and the long drive home, it kept its rhythm. And that steadiness humbled me. I spent so much of my life trying to keep up, trying to manage time, trying to bend the world into my schedule. But the ocean doesn't wait for me. And maybe I don't have to fight so hard to keep up either. And walking back into my house, lugging in wet gear and sandy bags, I realized that I wasn't just carrying camping supplies. I was carrying proof that it's okay to step away, even alone. Proof that solitude isn't the same thing as loneliness. Proof that the world is larger than the noise I bring into it. Heck, as a side note, when I put all my camping gear at my front door, I thought to myself, how can one person need so much stuff? And I realized that I didn't need all of what I took out there. I survived on minimal items. I think I survived on a quarter of what I took of 100%. That's the gift of a trip like this. It doesn't erase the stress or stop the work from piling up, but it changes how you carry it. It reminds you that life doesn't always need more control. Sometimes it just needs more presence. And you thought you were going to get away without getting a challenge. Hey, this is called Challenge Accepted with Jonah C. So this week, carve out a moment just for yourself. It doesn't have to be a whole weekend. Maybe it's an hour. Maybe it's an afternoon. Step away from the noise. Let the world move without you and notice what changes in you when you come back. As we close the show, I want to leave you with this. The ocean is never still. It rises, it falls. It moves with a rhythm older than anything we can measure. And when we step away and listen, even for a short time, we remember that we're part of that rhythm too. Most of life pushes us to go faster and louder and harder. But sometimes the most radical choice is to pause, to step away, to be alone without being lonely. And when we do, we come back carrying something the noise of the world cannot give us: clarity, presence, and the quiet strength to move forward differently. The ocean will always be there. The question is, when you return, will you be there the same? Hey, I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me over that weekend. I want to thank all of you for the DMs, the text messages, and everything that actually did help me not be as lonely as I thought I was going to be. Until next week, thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks for hanging out, and have a great week.